Did the Legos Mindstorms kind of products walk so that a lot of AI applications today could run? I guess.
I would like to say that. I feel thank you so much for your time. Folks are tuning in and listening in, and yeah, happy to open it up to questions.
Thank you so much, Chris. I've been filtering through some of the questions here, so let's do some of the ones first from the audience. First of all, why is it called DuckBricks?
That is a very, very good question. I think that, so there's a couple of reasons, and there's kind of a more personal reason for me is I had this stuffed animal named Duckity. My whole life, I've kind of just had him around, and he kind of became the mascot of the channel. I'm going to see if I can find a photo of him. But yeah, here he is. So Duckity has kind of become the mascot. He doesn't quite look like that anymore. He's lost a lot of fur over the years, I think. But he kind of became like his face was the mascot of the channel because I bring him everywhere I go. I take him on a lot of trips, and that's kind of the more personal reason as to why I named it DuckBricks. But then Lego actually got started by making wooden toys. And one thing that they were doing back in the 30s and the 40s were, instead of doing plastic or bricks at all, they had these like wooden toys. Their most successful was the wooden duck. And that's a pretty iconic part of Lego history. And so I kind of felt like, with my own personal touch and then also with the duck being a really important part of Lego itself, I figured it all kind of made sense to just call it DuckBricks and have that be the channel name.
Oh, that's very sweet. The have you ever actually made a version of that duck out of bricks?
I have. I don't have it with me, but I have. I've made like a little DuckBricks head out of bricks just recently, actually, just like a few weeks ago. I didn't even think of ever doing that until recently.
Perfect. All right. Next question. When thinking about startups, have you noticed any patterns in your startup experience regarding growth strategy and or finding product market fit?
Oh wow, yeah, that could be another talk all to itself. I think that one thing, or at least one lesson I've learned, and I would absolutely not call myself an expert. I've failed far more times than I've succeeded. But I think from each failure, I think arguably those are even more useful and more kind of relevant to learning than the ones that do well. And I guess one thing I found is that sometimes I've tried to approach making a startup by saying, we've got this really cool product and it does this really cool thing. We've built it out and let's try to fit a problem to it. And I think that was one of the biggest pitfalls that I made, especially in college when I was building out one of my startups where we had this incredible, like it was really, really cool piece of technology, like a physical hardware device we had made. But we tried to tackle a very, very big problem. And I guess the example I'll give, it was this, at the very beginning, at least for this startup, it was this kind of smart medical dispenser for addictive medication. A big problem, right? Solving the opioid crisis. But it wasn't until we realized who the stakeholders were and what problem we really needed to be solving until it really took off. Because for the first 2 years, we were trying to solve the issue of people overtaking medication. So we were dispensing medication basically according to their prescription. But then we realized that there's not really a lot of incentives aligned in the healthcare industry to actually pay money towards making sure people stick to their prescriptions, right? Because like doctors, they're not going to be shelling out. Doesn't really matter to hospitals. It's really just very difficult managing those stakeholders. But I think once we did a ton of market research and drilled down, okay, what really is the root of the problem? Well, the root of the problem isn't necessarily that people are overtaking. It's that doctors don't have enough data as to prescription trends to understand how much to prescribe. And then we were like, okay, the problem that we're trying to solve isn't dispensing, the problem is data. So then when we started to transition it over to a data company and say that, okay, well now we have this device, but it's really there to collect data, allow patients to opt in, and have that data be reported back to doctors if they choose to better kind of make the prescription regimens more finely tuned to the patient, that yielded much better results. And then there was an immediate financial return as well in terms of actual players in the industry being interested in making sure that this data was out there and available for doctors to prescribe better. So I guess that was just like an example of finding product market fit is maybe not necessarily what you would think at first. And I think we did make the mistake of wanting to build this cool project at a hackathon and then saying, all right, well, how do we fit the product to this problem?
And I think that's a good example of any true like quality innovative processes. Everything changes. Everything finds new information comes, feedback, alterations, and never be afraid to make those changes. So that's a fantastic lesson. All right. How do you balance your work and Lego life?
That is a great question, and honestly, maybe I might not be the right person to ask because I do not get a lot of sleep, to be completely honest. But no, I mean, I think it's definitely a lot. But one of the things that I do is that I love putting out videos, and I feel like that's my way to de-stress. I feel like there's kind of two things that I do, and one of them, which is maybe more important than the other, is more of a mindset thing. Um, sure, like YouTube is a way to make extra money on the side. There's like ad revenue. That I have a few businesses related to Lego. Like I have a 3D printing business, so I got like a little resin farm and a 3D printing plastic farm coming out of my garage to print custom Lego pieces, which I'm sure garage folks can really be excited about because I'd love to talk more about folks who are doing similar stuff with that. But it's never really. I've made the conscious effort to never make it feel like a job because I feel like the moment I start trying to treat something that brings me joy, something that brings me de-stress in my life as, oh, another job, like I have to make another video and I have to do this, do that, then I feel like you'll lose some of the magic in that sense where I feel like I'm just doing it for pay. And there's plenty of things in life that I think we do for a job, and it's like that exists, that plays its role there. But Lego for me is something purely to de-stress, and I think that's really helped me gain the motivation to keep doing stuff on YouTube and doing Lego stuff. Um, but I think that because of that and kind of that mentality, what I've done is I've tried to basically pre-make videos and be ready to go. So if it's like planning cycle for Microsoft or work is getting really busy, I can just not touch the YouTube channel for a few weeks or months, but I just have enough videos in the backlog that are ready to just auto publish that I'll never really fall behind. And the way I do that is that if there are lighter weeks, even if I have videos planned out for the next few weeks or months, I'll just be filming stuff like after work. If work ends like a little early, like let's say I'm done by 4:35, I'll just go and start filming videos and film it until dinner. And that's a good chunk of time there to just get work done and kind of just build up my backlog of stuff to make it a little bit more manageable, I guess.
And I heard that's what you did during the filming time, right? Because it was 2.5
That's
months
right.
for Lego Masters, so you prepped a whole bunch
Yes.
to kind of hide the fact that you were off filming. So
Exactly. And later this year, I'm actually moving to New York for 2 months just to see if I want to live there more permanently. And I've got videos to go there because I'll be working Microsoft remotely, but I won't have the Lego collection. So it's another thing where it's just like, if I know I'm doing something, I'll just make sure I'm covered for that point.
hmm, that's fantastic. Yeah, not we've got so many things we choose to do in life that not everyone needs to be made into a side hustle for profitability. Some things can
Yes.
exist just purely for our own enjoyment and pleasure.
Yes.
So as a little pivot, there was talk of a little garage anecdote that back when you were younger, coming into the Redmond
Yes.
garage.
Yes.
Would you be able to share a bit more about that?
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Yes, I can't believe. Yes, I'm really excited. Yes. So what happened was that when I was a kid in high school, my first so I took it was the first time it was offered at my high school. They had a 3D printing class. And so this was freshman year of high school for me, which must have been 2015, I want to say 2014, 2015, around that time frame. And so it was I still have fairly, I guess, new technology for consumer side of things. Prusa was just really kind of getting a foothold, and there were a lot of maker bots and stuff like that. But I took this 3D printing class at high school, and I kind of fell in love with 3D printing. And I was like, wow, I really love doing this. I guess it was kind of a no-brainer given how much I loved Lego. And I was like, oh, I can just make my own Lego things and other things, just materialize it right there. And so it got to the point where I would spend hours and hours after school in our labs doing the printing. But unfortunately, it only lasted for 1 year. But as it turns out, my sophomore year of high school, my dad actually got a job at Microsoft. And unfortunately, he's no longer at Microsoft now. It's actually really funny. When I joined Microsoft, he had left like a few months back. So there never was any overlap. But he's very happy because what happened was that my dad's also really into making, and we're really big kind of crafters and people who do hands-on stuff here at home. So he would always take me as a kid to our local garage at Microsoft, And I would go in as a high school kid and use the 3D printers and learn stuff. That's where I learned laser cutting. There's all sorts of different tools there. He made me take the laser cutting class that was held, or the training. I think it was like a Thursday night. I have a very, very vivid memory because there was like pizza and there were a ton of people there. And I think I was just like the only kid there, but great memories in the garage. And yeah, I got to a point where I would go pretty much every day after school. Like that was my after school activity. I would just go to the garage and play around with the 3D printers and laser cut stuff. And I was like sending out like invites to my graduation party for high school, laser cut into wood with like everyone's faces etched into it. And, all sorts of really fun stuff. So I feel like, yeah, the garage played a pretty significant role in my life in high school. And I'm very happy because when I was in college, when my dad was like, yeah, I think I'm gonna switch my jobs, I'm like, oh, we're gonna lose the garage. And then I got the Microsoft job, and I was like, oh, all right, perfect. There's we can just keep going back. And now it's me badging my dad in as the guest after work and stuff. And he's like, hey, let's attend the training so we can do it again. I was like, all right, I'll badge you in, and then we'll get in and do it together. So it's kind of come full circle.
Oh, that's amazing to hear. Yeah, because the let's see, about 2015, 2016 would have been the earliest years of the garages. So the Redmond location would have been perhaps the only one of the time. So that's great that
Maybe.
you had that location. We would have had the space already open, and then
Yeah.
yeah, bringing people through. So it's great to hear that even at the earliest stages, that the
Yeah.
garage was coming into existence, that it was having that kind of impact on people. So thank you so much for that
Thanks.
story.
Yeah.
And like as the custodian, and I'll just show my camera here, of the space up here in Vancouver,
Oh,
which is
wow.
quite a colorful
Oh
space that we've
man,
got here. Is
I think you've got us beat over at Redmond. I don't know.
Well, you guys have a much more kind of structured open. We're a little bit smaller, so we have to make do. But we end up with we're right next to the cafe here, so we have to have a lot of color to as in a
Nice.
draw. So but it's great to hear that that the spaces were having that kind of impact on people so long ago. All right, next question. They were wondering if there was a script for players at all in the show Lego Masters. Did they instruct you to prepare anything like sayings, catchphrases, or did they mostly leave it up to you?
That's a really good question. A lot of okay, so I think on the show there were a lot of moments that things would happen that they basically would just tell us to react in a certain way. I distinctly remember there was an episode focused around Cirque du Soleil, and there were performers that were supposed to be like, if you watch the show, we're going, oh wow, look at that, and we're watching them. But because of the COVID risk, they didn't have the performers in with us, and so they were just like, hey, look at that guy up on the balcony, pretend you're looking at something really cool and get big reactions. So there was always that sort of like scripting. But in terms of stuff we said, we never were given any lines. And actually, one thing that we did was that my teammate and I, and I'm very grateful to Microsoft for this as well. I went in because I build Lego sets. I don't really build custom. I guess I do now, but before then, I didn't really do any custom Lego builds like mocks, um, my own creations. So I convinced Robert to do it because I said, look, man, I know you're finishing up senior year in college. Um, we're gonna get kicked out like in the first week. Like it's gonna be no competition. And that's what I told my boss as well. Like I was like, yeah, the maximum amount of time is going to be like 2 months. But look, I'm like, there's no way I'm lasting. That's like if I win. Like I'm not gonna win. So it's all right. I'll put down my leave of absence for 2 months, but I'm gonna be back in like a week. You don't need to worry about it. I'll be all good. So that's kind of how I got away with being able to do it at the same time as Microsoft. But then because of that, we were like, okay, well, if we think we're going to get kicked out pretty soon, can we come up with something interesting or funny that we can do to at least like maybe have a personality that's entertaining? Let's have some fun with it. So we came up with this whole like villain persona that we factored into the entire thing to say to literally just to have some fun with it. Which was like something we came up with, but then as we started doing better and better, I think by the second half of the season we were like, oh, maybe we shouldn't like keep positioning ourselves as the villains because then they're not going to let us win. So then we kind of built in a character arc. So there were lines that Robert and I we would come up with in the hotel room the night before filming and be like, oh, that's going to be so funny, we should do this, do that. But nothing the show ever gave us. No.
Oh, cool. I mean, you seem definitely like just looking at some of the clips and stuff from the program, like you seem like the ideal person to be in a program like that. You've got a ton of personality. You're very eloquent. You know how to put like you
Oh,
got a kind of personality you can put in as also presenter, and you seem like a very, of course, you've got all the experience as a YouTuber for like creating a brand, creating an identity, knowing how to talk and present to the camera. So
oh,
I
sure.
imagine you must have been a delight to work with, but it seems to just be something you do very, very naturally now. Do you think that like
That
your
means a lot.
experience? Do you think it's a little bit more your experience growing up that led to that, or perhaps a lot of time like once you got into YouTube and wanted to do your own kind of programming? Did you find that kind of transformed your abilities and performance a bit?
I feel like I've always been, I guess, really extroverted. Like I'm always open to meeting new people. Like I love meeting people. I get energy from like parties and events and just like kind
Mm.
of getting a chance to be out there. I don't know. Like maybe that was just always from when I was a kid. I feel like growing up, I just always had like a lot of different, like I was in a lot of different friend groups and we would always just kind of go on our own adventures. And I guess when I was a kid, my friends and I would kind of make our own little movies and we would kind of star as our own actors in our own productions. So maybe that helped a little bit. But yeah, I think doing the YouTube thing definitely helped a lot in terms of knowing like how to communicate things. And I think
Mhm.
also running startups did as well because we were at a certain point we were at pitch events every single week in college and it just was honing down the pitch and trying to kind of come up with the perfect one for whatever scenario we were in. So I feel like we did get a lot of kind of training, myself and Robert, because he was my startup co-founder through college. He still is my a co-founder I'm working with on our side startup, and it's just kind of something that we do a lot. And yeah, I know it's just been a lot of fun. And I mean, I think I have a lot of folks. I mean, one of my professors in high school to thank because initially I feel like without this, I probably would have just. I mean, I probably would have been focused only on just programming and computer science. And there's nothing wrong with that. I have a lot of respect for people who do, and I think they're a lot more talented than me. But I had a high school teacher encourage me to join a pitch competition for the first time with this app that I made when I was just focused on development. And I think that was probably the catalyst to actually getting in this world of like public speaking. And I just gave a TEDx talk recently as well. And that kind of really opened up a whole new world of doing that sort of thing. So I'm very, very thankful and grateful for my teacher in high school for just encouraging me to apply to this because I don't think I would be in this spot if I didn't.
I've actually got a similar experience. I've got some high school teachers that I know were super supportive of like direct
Yeah.
presentations and things, and it's really key just how much that influences you later in life and getting that early start. I also think as a result of the COVID years and work from home
Yes.
and stuff, we learned, a lot of us working in this industry had to learn very much about how to have an online personality, working with the camera and things like that to understand
Yes.
how that translates to other people online. So fantastic. All right, we got a couple more questions here from the audience. In your opinion, did the Legos Mindstorms kind of products walk so that a lot of AI applications today could run? I
You
guess.
know, I would like to say that. I feel well, I mean, the cool thing about Lego is that they've always been, and this kind of ties into the garage stuff, but from the beginning, they've always been a very like open source style of company. At least when it came to Lego Mindstorms. I mean, Mindstorms itself was back in the day, it was like Mindstorms RCX. They put out the product and they found that I think it was like a professor at MIT. I think the story is that he had managed to kind of crack into it and figure out the code, but instead of doing like a cease and desist and telling him to stop, they invited him over and opened up the code to make it open source for the RCX. And I think Lego's always been a strong proponent of kind of opening up their technological advances so people like the community can come together and just make them better and make them even cooler and do more interesting things. And I also do feel like that is a lot of the spirit behind AI and Copilot with Microsoft and all the other companies doing it today. I mean, I'm sure people saw that insane OpenAI demo that I think dropped like a couple days ago because that
Hmm.
was the big buzz with all my friends. We were watching the videos and just absolutely mind blowing stuff. And I think just earlier this morning or yesterday, Google did. Someone was telling me Google did their own presentation on what they're doing with AI, and obviously Microsoft with Copilot is making incredible leaps and bounds. And I feel like every company out there is really pushing towards it. So you know what? Maybe I feel like everything can be tied back to Lego. So I'd like to
Hmm.
think that.
Awesome. All right. Just a couple more here, I think. How did you start making your own Lego creations?
That is, yeah. I mean, to be honest, the answer was getting thrown onto a TV show. But I think it's like it's been always really interesting because I feel like I built a lot of Lego sets, and I picked up on a lot of random building techniques by building Lego sets, which I feel like, especially nowadays, sets have become just so much more advanced, and they have a whole initiative for Lego for adults, like Lego icons. And I feel like because Lego has been making their sets more complex, more detailed, including more and more interesting things, it's just been really educational. It's been an educational experience to build Lego sets. Um, and that really helped me with a lot of different building techniques, I would say. Um, but then moving, I guess otherwise, like I think being on the show and being exposed to so many sorted bricks and everything was perfectly laid out, it kind of was the perfect test ground to start like actually trying out different things. And obviously, it was a very different experience. You're under a very serious time pressure to deliver. So, but I think that also forced us to, okay, let's try this. Whether it works or not, we kind of have to stick with it and build the next thing. And that kind of was something that we felt we improved a lot over time because we just kept throwing things at the wall. So that's how we got started. But honestly, I would say like building Lego sets teaches you a lot. Like the Speed Champions line, it's like these realistic small scale cars, but it's so incredible the piece usage there. And then some of the larger stuff for icons is just really incredible. So I mean, I absolutely have a list of sets that I would say like check out if you want to learn learn how to build better.
Hmm. I know, and I know definitely we've even had staff and teams on site here use Lego as part of their kind of analysis of how people work through problem solving, how people
That's
move with their
awesome.
hands and working through parts and things like that. And in fact, I was a test subject for one of those because my personal
No way.
because I'm a Lego enthusiast and but I treat Lego as a sort of it's like a speed challenge for myself. Like thinking how
Nice.
quickly I can get through a set. So I've same
Yep.
thing. I've never been much of an
Same for me.
independent builder, but I would love to just like put down a set and challenge myself to see how quickly I can get through it. We're understanding the pieces, predicting what's going to be the next step and sort of thing, and then turning the page and be like, oh,
Awesome.
I was wrong about that. So I know it's been integral for testing purposes here because really what Lego does best in as a toy, as a building component, very few things have managed to touch it over the years. So mhm.
Well, that's
uh,
awesome to hear, man. I'm the
yeah.
same way.
So I've got one question here that I was hoping to ask. So I read that you had practiced for several weeks before your Lego Masters
I did.
kind of things. What sorts of things did you practice in preparation?
That's a great question. I actually put out a video on this on how I trained for Lego
Oh, okay.
Masters, so a bit of a shameless plug there. No, but I think what we did was, I mean, Robert is he was really great because he flew out to my Lego collection about a week before we were supposed to fly out for the show, and we did a pretty intensive like training on that week of after like we were both in work during the day, but then after we got off work, we were training. We would just practice building a sphere quickly, building different sizes of it, building an animal, building like a castle, a building, a car, practicing that, and then also building under time. And then also we would do like practices of like he would start building something and then I would have to finish it and kind of understand what he
Mm,
was doing and keep the style consistent because we didn't want to have clashing styles in our builds. So that was really good to like practice working as a team. And I also just had to build a ton of Lego sets. Like I was just like, here's my backlog. Like you should build this, and this. Absolutely, totally. A very, very crucial part of the training was having him knock a few sets off the backlog that ever is growing. Of course. But no, it was a lot of fun just having him practicing. And practice was a big part of the audition for the show as well. Because even though I was asked to apply, it was a very, very serious application process. We had many rounds of camera tests and build tests, and the final audition for the show culminated in us literally in a Teams call because Lego loves Microsoft Teams. Lego's a very Microsoft oriented company. It's
mm,
very funny. They use but it was a big Teams call with like all the different teams, and we had to kind of basically practice being on the show. We were mailed a box of pieces and told to like, hey, build this based on this prompt. Um, and that was really how we practiced. So the show facilitated a lot of it, but it also was just a lot of practice as well.
that's fair because certainly like you could be an incredible builder, make brilliant things, have great personality and stuff like that. then the second you're actually on camera and asked to like film, like
Yeah.
do you just go silent and work on it personally, or are you a great personality to watch working and stuff? So that's fascinating, and it's really interesting to know that they take the interview process also crosses over into what you do on the program. So
Yeah. Yeah.
because they would also have all of your backlog of DuckBricks stuff to look through as well. So I'm
Yes.
sure it
Yes.
certainly helped with the application.
I think it helped, but it also was, it's hard to tell like how I would be with a partner, how I'd be with like with other people, I think, because I'm always just like by myself in the videos mostly. Like sometimes I
Oh,
do
true.
wonder,
Yes.
but no, I think it definitely was, I think, why they reached out. But it was, yeah, it was a pretty crazy process of auditioning even. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. We're almost. I think we've probably got time for maybe two more questions here. Let me just see if there was. There was one about here. Do you have any tips for starting a Lego channel? For instance, she says, "My mom loves to build Lego, and she's thinking of opening one for her."
Oh, well, that's really sweet. That is really nice. I mean, for me, my tip is always, and maybe this isn't the right answer, so to speak, but I always try to approach things as do what brings you joy and make videos because you want to make videos and make the videos that you want to make. I think that if I was trying to approach making a YouTube channel to maximize like clicks or to maximize like clickbait and views and monetize it, I would be doing things very, very differently. Some of my most popular videos are many hours long. Like I put out a 9-hour video that was just me talking through the lore of Lego Bionicle, which was one
Oh
of
my
their
God.
original story themes. And I feel like traditionally, like that's not the kind of video that does well on YouTube because it's like nine bloody hours long. But I think that like for me though, it's like it hasn't felt like a job. It's felt fun. It's felt like a hobby because I'm not sitting down being like, okay, how do I optimize this to be like, I think 8 minutes or something is what I was told is like the sweet spot for videos. It's like I'm trying to optimize that or optimize the quick cuts to keep viewer retention. I'm not really thinking about that. And maybe that's not the best advice for someone wanting to turn making a YouTube channel into a career or to do it for money. But if you're doing it for fun, I would say do videos that you would want to watch, right? Like, are you making something that you yourself would want to watch? You're going to be the best judge of that. And I feel like I've kind of followed that path for better or for worse with everything I do with YouTube. And it has paid off in some ways. And there's also a lot of videos I put out that's like multi-hour long and people are like what is this so like you never know how people are going to react but that's what keeps it fun for me.
Yeah, that's fair. There's 9-hour videos, there's TikTok link videos, and there's somewhere in the middle is where we're really
Somewhere
aiming
in
for.
between
So
is probably the sweet spot,
yeah,
skewing a
yeah,
little further away from the 9 hour, but yeah.
yep, and well away from the 10 seconds. So
Yes, yes.
fantastic. And I think time for one more question before I do our last question here. How are your fingers after the competition?
I feel like I've built up so much like I don't know, calluses or like it doesn't even it doesn't affect it's the same as stepping on Lego. Like I don't even feel it anymore. I think my feet
Oh
have
my
built up
goodness.
calluses from stepping on Lego because I just always like I've had it around. But no, it's been it definitely I think one thing it was when I returned from the competition, one of my friends was like, I've never seen you this low energy and this like unwilling to socialize with people. Like you would go to events and just be like, "Hey guys," then leave. Like I think that like I think mentally I was drained. Like it was more like emotionally and mentally drained for like it lingered over me for like a month after filming finished. But physical wise, like I'm always building. So
Well,
oh
it's yeah. I find in our industry, like we do a lot of things with computers and tech and things, not a lot of their physical demands. And then if we have a
yeah.
side hobby that is just like, oh yeah, because I have to do woodworking and things as part of my
Oh,
role
that's
here, like
awesome.
my fingers are
Yeah.
not tough enough for consistent work woodworking. I get splinters and
Oh
stuff all the
man.
time. So if I were having to take a crack at assembling Lego for 5 hours, oh boy, I do not think I would have the calluses built up for that sort of thing. All right, and I think I'm going to end it with our last question here. Now you were going for potentially it sounds like the world record or the Guinness Book World Records for the largest Lego competition
Yes.
or sorry collection.
Yes. So technically we have it. I think I'm at 9,000 sets now. The current world record holder is 6,000. So I think we can beat them anytime. However, I contacted Guinness and they said, great, send us one video, no cuts of you counting every single one by one.
Oh,
If you mess up once or the numbering is off, you got to redo it. So don't get me wrong, I will do that at some point, but that
oh
point
my
is not
goodness.
now. I think that point is going to be like when I have a week free, literally a week free, and I don't know how I'm going to make it one continuous video, but that is the requirement to get the world record. So I will do it, but just I think it's probably going to realistically happen when I move, and that's why I'm kind of thinking about moving to New York or something, because if I have to move the whole collection,
Yeah.
that'll be a good excuse to take everything down and just as I'm taking it down, putting it away, like here's number 1, here's number 2, 3, all the way up to 9,000 or so. So it should
Wow.
be an
That, yeah,
interesting time.
that sounds demanding. Now here's the question. What
Yes.
is your favorite Lego set?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I gotta say, there's a set from 2017, but they keep putting out similar ones in the series. It's called Ninjago City. It's this it's a modular building, and it's kind of the cyberpunk style city that's Asian inspired, but also has a lot of like high tech blended with like older style of architecture in it. It's a really, really interesting set. And they've done a lot more of it over the years. They've done like Ninjago City Docks or Ninjago City Gardens or Ninjago City Markets, and it's all just they're all modular, so they all form this big multi-level city block. And that series of sets is like one of the most detailed, one of the most like there's a lot going on. It's not for everyone because it's like very visually cluttered, but I think that's the kind of aesthetic that I really like, and it just taught me a lot about building a lot of detail into scenes. So definitely
Oh,
that one.
oh wow, I've just posted in the chat, and that does
Yeah.
actually looks a lot like the kind of sets I would see actually in Lego Masters, where it's just like create a slice of city and things,
Yeah.
and that like and all sorts of little hidden details. So
Oh, this is way better than anything we could have done. I'll tell you
yeah.
that.
Well, we're coming right at 2 o'clock, and I want to be respectful of your time and everybody else's time. So, Christopher, this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this talk, and of course, spend so much time answering questions, because we had lots of questions here to fill up the whole thing. And thank you so much for answering all of them. So,
Of course. Well, thank you so much for having me. Seriously, really, really means a lot that folks came out, and it's really good to meet people. And thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate all of you reaching out and being here. And yeah, hit me up anytime you want to talk Lego or talk startups or anything like that. Talk YouTube. Like, I'm always down. I gotta see the garage for sure.
thank you, Chris. Thanks for everyone for hopping on, and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.